These look like a great choice. I haven't actually tried the DT700 Pro X's, but they seem kind of related. Oh my God, your head is so big.
Yeah, it's huge. These are nice. Pretty isolating. I prefer that.
We've got a Fifine mic arm, an AT2020 mic, and a Nexigo AI-powered webcam.
Yeah.
Why the fancy 4K webcam?
Elijah?
Did you choose anything?
Nope.
He had mentioned he wanted a better webcam than he had. And we had a bunch of these in inventory, so I was able to take it for real cheap, and...
I got a deal.
Your mic arm's flaccid.
And I can't get it open.
Not being able to.
How? What? Huh?
Okay, all right. Just relax, okay? Okay, what all we got here? We got the, oh, look at that. Got the RGB docking station. Darking station. Oh, check out this iSky Cypher. Sky Cypher Xbox. Oh, is it clear?
Yeah, dude.
Oh, cool.
I love clear tech. Dude, look at that. Ooh, so cool. Transparent.
Sky Cypher,
translucent, whatever you call it.
Wow, your Steam Deck has some dust on it, brother. Do you even use this thing?
I used it more a few months ago when the baby was very young.
Okay, there. Ah. I mean, this is a weird thing to walk in on.
I was trying to get the microphone test working. We're doing okay. We're getting the Scarlett all set up here. It's just updating and everything. The headphones, it's working as a sound output right now.
Okay.
We're just trying to get the input working. We do have it switching over to the laptop, but it'll only do one monitor, and the laptop monitor, again, I think it might be the pluggable dock. But I'm also gonna talk to Wendell about it.
Sure.
And see if there's something weird between the KVM and this dock or something.
All right, cool, now it's fixed.
Tell me what you did.
One of the DisplayPort ports is an alt mode port. So we were probably in the wrong one the whole time.
Such a simple thing. I should have known.
What a sick setup now. Look at this. We got all three here and like, dude, and then now you can be all like hacking the mainframe on your laptop and then be like scroll, one, boom! Desktop, let's go!
Now we're gamers.
Now we're gaming, let's game, boys!
It's pretty cool setup though.
Yeah! Dude, that's so smooth now that it's plugged into the right port.
And I also got a new MacBook, which is actually going under the tree for my wife for Christmas. So there might be some footage of that now.
It's not a perfect solution. However, it's working.
So we can't get it working wirelessly right now? Do we think we're gonna be able to get it working wirelessly?
I don't know, maybe. Should be. Oh, come on. This is hard.
Yep.
While he's doing this, I'll just do a quick recap, man. We got his desktop upgraded. It's now like a super small, power efficient, not to mention cool running small form factor. We got that sick KVM setup that allows him to nearly instantaneously switch between his work laptop and his home gaming desktop. We've got our Steam Deck dock all set up in the living room here. Got the Christmas present. And of course, the most important part, a giant inflatable snowman. Truly an upgrade budget well spent.
Well, and a leaf blower and mulcher.
Thanks AMD for sponsoring this AMD Ultimate Tech Upgrade. I mean, realistically, who else? Who else would sponsor AMD Ultimate Tech Upgrade? If you guys are looking for more like this, why don't you go check out Sebastian's, yeah. He's actually on Nick's team. Okay, we're not actually related, and I'm pretty sure I'm older than him, but hanging out with Lucas makes me feel like the little brother, and we can't start his AMD $5,000 ultimate tech upgrade until we can find some way to get us both in the freaking shot. Maybe this will work. Lucas works hard on power supply testing for the lab, and we can't shoot the whole video like this. Cut. We can't make him shorter, so we're gonna have to make me taller. These are some incredible Crocs. Okay, how's that? Ah, that's more like it. I have never used these before. What could go wrong? Okay. Hey, that's better. Anyway, like I was saying, Lucas works on power supply circuit and power supply reviews on LTTLabs.com. I can't believe it's taken so long for an LTT Labs member to get a $5,000 ultimate tech upgrade from our sponsor AMD, but here we are, both high as and ready to get to work.
Get it? It's a
I
height.
get that, yeah. You're like not even that much taller.
Before we get to the upgrade, as is tradition, we've got to... All right, I think we're gonna have to lose the stilts.
So, uh, for today's assignment, I am going to review the GTA 6 trailer 1 video on YouTube. And for the frame analysis, what I did was I uh, took the video off of the internet and I put it through a software which broke it down into frames. So I did actually analyze every frame from this, but what I'm presenting is select frames that I picked out. There's still about 100 frames here. I'll try to get through all of them, but I'll point out the things that really stick out to me, and hopefully that'll help you understand what my point of view on this. So, all right, let's jump in. I'll go to our first frame. Here we go. So, uh, of course, this is the first scene that we get. I think there's a lot happening here, and I think that's what's really interesting is that they throw a lot of information at you in the first scene. Of course, some of the things that people pointed out is that there's a prison in the background. There's also the skyline as well, and a little bit further in the background to the left side of the picture. I'll be using my mouse to point, and there's a bridge here, and of course there's a bridge here over this swamp area. Some of the things that jump out to people, obviously I'm not a big car guy, but there are a lot of uh, different types of cars. You can see that the first thing that they're showing off as well is that the ambient lighting reflects off of the concrete and the asphalt and that sort of thing. So the environment seems as if the lighting is a little more immersive. You can see the clouds look really amazing as well. I think that's probably something that's going to be included in it. Another thing that kind of jumps out to me is this giant tower. So I ended up actually screenshotting and blowing up this part of the image. So what I see here is a giant tower. I'm not entirely sure what it's going to be for. It's much taller than every other structure, and just by looking at the hieratic scale that's happening there, they're telling a story with this already. Um, so let's move on. I also blew up the image of the truck. This is like a brand. I'm not entirely sure. Excuse me, what this brand is, but it looks like a couple beer bottles. But it's just something that they're tossing into the world to make it a little more immersive. It's one of those things. So the next scene that you see is this sort of fence. It's kind of like the camera kind of pans from left to right or something like that, and you see this same. It's the same time of day, and whether it's sunset or sunrise, I believe it might be sunset, and there's those birds which were flying in the background of this image, I think. Can't confirm that really, but we're looking from the perspective of this prison to these birds, which are here. And I actually looked into it, so I did a little bit of background on this, and I actually looked up the prison that this takes place in, and it's actually a woman's prison, in a place called Homestead, Florida, and it's called the Homestead Correctional Institution, and I believe that's what the sort of research that this team did to sort of create not only the location but sort of recreate mm, the emphasis of like where this is and that sort of thing. So, um, of course, this is a woman's prison actually. So that's what makes it a little more unique as well. That this is like a woman's a female detention center, and. As soon as we move on, we get this over the shoulder shot of a female figure, and we're looking over her right shoulder, and what we're seeing is this sort of uh, prison yard, and everyone's wearing orange. So there's also a image to the bottom right as well. I'm not really sure what that is. This might be a bunk. This might be people's loved ones. This might be actually the place that they're staying. Who knows? Um, and a couple of frames go by. It's probably at least like 10 or 15 frames, and we get our first sort of image of what we perceive to be the main character. So that's something that I found pretty interesting. That this is the first sort of resolved image of Lucia, and as we're looking at Lucia, uh, she turns towards us and looks past us, and we get this sort of almost profile look with this sort of Rembrandt lighting that they're using there. So I find this pretty interesting, you know. And of course, if this is the main character and the hero, I could see this being that. And my reasons why are, uh, they casted a pretty beautiful looking character. Um, you know, very stern, and from the get-go we're following the story, you know, like this is like a woman in prison, right? You know, like to me that says a lot of different things. There's a lot of connotations there, whether they are uh, you know, they have something to do with uh, you know, power or power dynamics, good and bad, good and evil. I think there's a lot of things going on there that I'm really picking apart here, so I do find that pretty interesting. um, and this is the first close up that we get of another character, and it's an over the shoulder shot from the left hand side. And we get this this is the first frame that we actually see here. And what this seems to be is someone who is getting Lucia out of jail. Um, she is wearing a badge around her neck, so I'm alluding that this might be like a prison official. It might be a social worker. It might be someone who's involved in the story a little further. Um, I've seen some theories of people saying that this might be something that alludes to a good and evil part of the storyline, maybe that there's karma. And there's a lot of connections to different games that will do that sort of thing, but this is the one thing that kind of comes out to me is the first frame is this, you know, this woman. Here's another frame just of her, you know, this is if we go back, like this is a good image. And another thing that we might notice as well is just the the graphical change of the entire engine almost. So you can see that the lighting is still pretty hazy. It's pretty direct. It's coming from one location, but that the eyes actually uh, move. So we can't see it in the two frames that I captured, but it the eyes kind of move at you, and that's something that's, you know, a little different and adds a little more detail. Um, Although some of the nitpicky things, which I was asked to include in some of this, so some of the nitpicky 3D things that I do see are that the clothing does look a little unnatural on the character. I feel that it kind of pops off a little bit, and uh, you know, that's just one of those nitpicky things. Also, the lanyard that is going around her neck seems to be floating a little bit, which might allude that these things are, uh, you know, these might be items that the main character might be able to interact with or wear or interchange on their body. Um, and I'll get into that a little further as I uh, analyze the rest of these frames. But here's just a picture of her face. You could also zoom in and see the name badge itself there. I couldn't make it out, but that is something included there. So we pan back, and she does not look happy. But also, something that I see here as well is the painting behind her is also representing a a ship or a boat on a lake, and it's completely alone. So I find it very interesting of this sort of like complementary imagery that's happening within the scene. There's also another face on the bottom right corner, and that's this woman's you know, family photos or something. There's a high vis outfit in the background that's kind of draped over. I don't think really there's that many important things. Then it does kind of a cut into this scene, and I find this pretty interesting. This is kind of a close up of one of the new vehicles that might be included in the story. But not only is it a vehicle, like an actual vehicle, but I also believe that it's a vehicle within the narrative and the story as we look at it, right? Because it leads us into the next sort of reveal. Um, the next reveal being this frame that I captured here, and you see a lot of wildlife. There's the water looks pretty realistic to me. The uh, there's dolphins, what looks to be some sort of maybe porpoises. I'm not sure, but there's wildlife there, and that's like another one of the things that we'll get into as we look at the next couple frames. But again, we get a couple. It alludes to a couple more vehicles. I think it's pretty interesting that everything kind of goes in different directions as well. So these things are pointing downwards. The birds are flying from the right to the left, or I mean, to the left to the right, and there's also people as well. We could, of course, this is like an image of like Miami or something, but or it's supposed to be a representation of Miami. I've only ever been to the beaches on the West Coast and LA and that sort of thing, and really, it does get this crowded, and that's one of those things that I find pretty interesting as well. That they took the time to actually include a lot of little people and little bits and those sort of things. There's jet skis, there's umbrellas, there's towels, there's lifeguard stands. So it really does speak to me in that sort of sense. I do get a yeah, I feel like I'm at the beach. I ended up capturing this shot. What it does is it basically shows this sort of worm's eye view where the camera is pointing up at this sort of apartment building. And I'm not entirely sure if this apartment building has any particular significance in the story or if it's just there to show you what the landscape is about. But the reason I picked out this frame was because I noticed a like a big lens flare actually. There was a big lens flare, and I'll bring this up a little more. I think there's a little conspiracy going on there. There's a lens flare that comes up in this one, and it looks very unnatural. Excuse me. I'm not sure if it actually leads into anything, but there is this lens flare that I did want to point out. Um, I I actually took the lens flare and made it into a negative to see. So I ran a lot of these images through different filters to see if there was anything kind of like in there or hidden or anything like that. But let's move on. Uh, so in this next frame, it kind of cuts to what looks like an airboat. I think that's what they're called, but it's just again showing off some more of the plant life, the wildlife. Also, that a lot of the scenes that we had seen before occurred in an urban landscape, and this scene itself is actually occurring in more of like in wilderness. Really, it looks like wilderness. So I find that pretty interesting. And it says a lot already. We've already gathered so much information, and the lighting is a little different. The lighting is orange and very golden, so maybe this is actually the sunset or the sunrise as well. um, then it cuts to this scene where you see all these kind of flamingos, and there's also some alligators and ducklings. There seems to be a deer back there. A lot of people are saying a lot of things about this, but it's just something that I've kind of observed. And this is a different type of bird as well, maybe. I'm not sure. But there's a lot going on in this image. It's basically, again, just highlighting some of the wildlife, what the environment looks like, the world. Then it cuts back to this scene, which I think is pretty cool. So it shows what I believe is more of a close up of what we had seen earlier. So I can dial it back a little bit, but I do believe that maybe this area with the blue umbrellas here is this area. So you got the blue, the yellow, and we got the lifeguard stand there. So that's the first thing that I think. I think the people who were directing this part left in a lot of stuff. Again, every image, every single frame had a ton of information in it, and it was very difficult to sort of dissect everything. Not only that, kind of playing it backwards and forward, but also kind of looking at things and these, a lot, looking at very specific things in this. So one of the first things that I did want to point out in these big scenes when there's a lot of people is that every single person is wearing a completely different thing. And that is probably one of the biggest giveaways of kind of what's going on here, because there's a little more to that. One of the things I think is that there's potentially an algorithm in which make which spawns every single person with different clothes from a preset value. But not only that, that every single person in this scene has a completely different hairstyle, has a completely different body type, and their accessories are also different as well. So there's three women in the foreground, and they look completely different from each other. And that's one of those things that just really speaks out. Another thing, there seems to be someone in the background, uh, like spray tanning or something like that back here, which again reinforces that the light is going to look pretty realistic. Also, the sand looks pretty real as well. Um, the I could say the same over here with the sort of imagery that's happening on the right, and I think they threw in a couple of jokes that I'll pull out as well. So I'll um, the next frame that I took was basically just to show that off. So from left to right, here's the, giant booty, and the and but it's shiny. That's the thing that you should know about that. That it's shiny. That the skin, and I'll get into it in a couple other frames that I was looking at, but and reviewing, uh, that the skin really seems to react with the environment. So this person is getting oiled up or something like that, but you could really see the light shining off of them. In the middle one, there's a pet. There's a little chihuahua. I think that's amazing. That's so cool. That's really interesting. That's another split second, uh, you know 20 frames really. I mean, it was really just a beat. And on the right, of course, they put in a little joke. There's like a guy taking a picture of a woman's behind. So I thought that was pretty funny. But I did have to highlight that. They threw in a little bit of a joke in the background. It now cuts to what looks like some sort of chase. Typically in a climax, they happen to have these shakedowns, or people get chased or something like that. And what I'm observing is these two characters here, which the picture is essentially centered on. Again, we have the bridge in the background, and we have a port. There's a lot of information on that. I won't get into that stuff, but there are again there's a lot of information in every frame, right? I tried to zoom in so we can get a better look at those two figures. I just don't know who they are, and here's another frame of them a tad bit closer. So I'm not sure. You can kind of make it out if you want. I don't know. I didn't try to enhance it or anything like that, but yeah. All right, so cuts to this scene, pretty iconic scene. I wasn't entirely sure if this was Lucia or not. Um, tried to zoom it in again, so yeah, I can't tell. I really can't tell. But I will say this: something that really rings out to me is she looks different every single time she shows up. I do want to say that as well, though. She does look different, and I think that is deliberate. Of course, there's this guy who is photographing the entire thing, and there's the mysterious man who's driving this car. This car, by the way, is what looks like some sort of sports car. I'm not really sure, but it doesn't really show up again in this. So that part might not be as important, but it might just be that that this stuff is expendable. Also, she's wearing very expensive clothing, right? And she's got jewelry on. I zoom in on it. There's the clasp, or whatever this thing is called, the bracelet that she's wearing, the clothing, like the dress that she's wearing, is very shiny, and the shininess is actually bouncing off of, or the lights are bouncing off of the shininess. It's reflective. So from what I see, it looks pretty good, right? You can see that the yellow down here is the yellow of the sign. So really, the curvature of the vehicle even kind of reflects on some of what she's wearing. But here's a zoomed in shot. I took the time to kind of zoom in and and just take a closer look. And one of the things that I kind of wanted to analyze there was if the bridge of the nose had anything to do, if that was any similar. The main thing that I would say would define this character as Lucia or something like that is that she's got the hoop earrings and the bracelet. Those are two accessories that seem to be consistent throughout the entire trailer. Here's another image, and uh, yeah, here's another image, but just to zoom in a little more, here's a closer image of the person who's videotaping on his cell phone, and then here's a closer image of the mysterious driver. So I was also looking at his brow line, I was looking at his haircut and the bridge of his nose, and he does look very similar to the sort of bald guy, or I don't know, the shaved head guy. He looks a little similar to that. So I don't know. That's how I really drew together that part of the analysis. So I'm not sure. It could be the mysterious person, could not be. We'll go into it a little further because I took a few more frames with that. But this is just another frame of uh, this mysterious woman. Uh, riding in the night. But I will say my one kind of comment on this is it looks pretty fake. The hair just doesn't do it for me. I don't know. It just hair just doesn't flow that way. Although I don't know, in animation they do exaggerate a lot, so this might just be an exaggeration to show kind of what's going on. It just feels a little unnatural to me though. All right, so next frame, it cuts to this scene where there's cars and they're really fancy, and there's like some custom art on the wall, some street art, and I tried to kind of round this corner and pause, I guess if that makes sense. So basically, the camera is essentially a car that's driving down this street, and it kind of pans over to this like little meetup, right? So that's kind of what I'm showing you. And when I see that, I see again I see another crowd of people. That's I just want to mention that again. When I see another crowd of people, they're all wearing different things. So again, this might be one of those things that kind of really uplifts and changes the entire narrative, right? That everybody is wearing something different. Um, that's something I wanted to point out. The cars have decals on them. I'm not entirely sure if these decals or any of the signages or the images or anything really pops out. But something that I did want to mention along the way is that once I start to see the license plates actually don't have anything written on them yet, and that's something that kind of interests me as well, right? That maybe every car is an individual entity that almost belongs to the people driving, right? But yep, we got people hanging out. Of course, there's someone holding a cell phone, so I think that alludes to social media. That might be one of the main things involved in the narrative, right? Moving along, we get this we get this scene, and of course, there's a lot of frames, right? But we move along to this scene. This is the first frame that we get of this area. I'm not entirely sure what this is. I mean, I looked at this picture for a really long time, and I saw a skull. Okay, so there's a memento mori in there. So I do think that's pretty interesting that they would put a skull in this. That is it's a little out of place, but I like it. It's something that if when I look at film and when I look at video games and I look at animation and I analyze this stuff, that's one of the things that really popped out to me. Um, Again, probably the star of the show is this woman, this woman to the left here that my mouse cursor is going over. I, I really think that's the star of the show. The main reason why is people talking about like the physics, the dance, that sort of stuff. I actually panned over to the right a lot. Because I was looking at the skull guy who is holding something or paying for something. I'm not sure. He's talking to another lady or something, or I don't know, he she, I'm not really sure what that is, but there's a couple of women in uniform with champagne bottles and what looks like flares or fireworks, that sort of thing. There's people on the railing at the top and sort of standing around this platform here, although um, this person to the right, that's getting like the lap dance sort of situation going on there. This part does look a little fake to me. The hands just don't do it. I got to be honest, like just the hands don't do it for me. The arms don't do it for me. It just for me like this, it just doesn't look like a real figure. It looks animated, and I tend to say the same about a lot of this stuff too. Um, I forget what I was looking at. Maybe it's the next frame. I forget. It's like, well, maybe not this frame, but again, if we look at the lady on the right, I captured it here, where it's just like this pose looks a little more realistic than this pose. Like this pose looks a little fake to me. I know it's like in the middle and it's kind of just like one frame, but like I mean, she holds it for like 3 frames. And it to me it looks a little weird because I think everybody's going to be looking at the left over here, but on the right there's like this kind of weird, animation kind of going on, and it starts off really weird. It just looks a little fake. I don't know, her arms look very stiff and her hands just aren't really doing anything. And even in this frame, her hands just they're not even on her knees. It just looks a little weird to me. It just looks fake. But again, it doesn't seem like it's about that. It's really a kind of showing off like these again another lens flare, but just the lighting and the way that it kind of reflects off of the skin and that sort of thing. So I do think it's kind of cool. Not to be nitpicky though, right? But yeah. And, again, is anyone in here actually a main character, or are they just showing something off? Because I don't think they would actually show a scene like this unless there was there was some serious significance to it. Maybe it's the skull guy. Maybe it's this guy. I don't know. Maybe it's this guy to the left. Who knows? Again, I did a bit of a freeze frame. There's a person here. I'm not sure if they have any significance themselves. There's not that many frames in this scene, anyways. Then we have this guy, the guy with the gold teeth. He's pretty cool. Again, there's 2 men standing in the background. I'm not entirely sure what that is, but he looks happy. He shakes the hand of what seems like a friend. One thing I did notice here was that I feel like the bandana on his head doesn't look real to me personally. Although uh, this is a good display of just the tattoos. That looks really cool. That seems like something that's going to be just a big part of this. Maybe that it's like a permanent element that people add on to themselves. But he has gold chains. I think that's pretty cool. There's a symbol here with a bull. There's a lot of clutter in the background, by the way. There's like a couch and some broken furniture and a billboard, and he's also wearing these sunglasses as well. So he's looking pretty cool, wearing a lot of gold. He's shaking the hand of another guy, and the reason I say that they might be friends is a greeting like this would not look this friendly if it wasn't if it wasn't friends, I mean, like this is like a serious. I mean, he's looking at him in the eyes and that sort of thing. So I do think that these might be uh, people you're going to interact with. These might be. There was a theory where this guy is like essentially a main character, and it might be the guys that are driving the boats that we were looking at earlier. So I do think this is pretty interesting. I have not much else to say besides these guys are watching in the background. Um, and they look fairly wealthy as well. Like they might have, they might be material. I mean, it looks materialistic to me personally. I mean, they got the gold chains, gold teeth, the sunglasses. To me, it looks a little materialistic, but it also, this guy's shirtless and he's wearing a bandana. So that's kind of an interesting vibe too. So they might, it's somewhere in between, right? That's what it says to me. Then it cuts to this sort of bird's eye view, which seems like it's probably like a helicopter or something. We see a toll road on a little island, and again, it looks like everything's in order, right? There's boats. There's in the background. There's a lot of tall buildings. They all light up. There's cars driving. The cars are, following the directions. So that looks pretty cool. The next scene is we get this sort of boardwalk. It says boardwalk here. We have a hotel. We have the Dixon, right? We have three women in the foreground. Again, we have a scene with a lot of people, and there's in this scene, everybody's wearing something different. I got to say that again. Everybody's wearing something different. Uh, I move another frame, and if anybody watches this, keep an eye on this guy coming out of the car, because his arm looks totally fake when he does it. So that's pretty crazy. Oh, and the last thing is Lance Vance. He actually makes a cameo in here. I think this figure. So he appears somewhere on the left-hand side over here, and I tried to blow it up, but this is him. He's wearing the white, suit, right? And he's got kind of like the purple out for the last few frames, but I did blow it up just to show you that. I thought that was pretty cool. All right, so kind of cuts to this scene with they're kind of showing off the nightlife, the parties, that sort of thing. I try to blow up the image as much as possible so we can get like a very resolved look at whoever this is. I really don't know who this is. So we've got that. Again, hand looking a little fake, hand looking a little fake. It's not doing it for me. I think that, we'll never get to a point where things look that realistic, right? Um, all right, but let's move on. We've got this going on here. This is an airplane. There's not a lot to say here, really. I mean, there's tons to say, but really, it's just there's kind of like I don't know, some little mini like island things going on there. Maybe some coral reef. So just a big boat. And I don't know, a lot of people theorize different things with this stuff that that you might actually be able to leave the island and go somewhere else or something. There's also this weird bulbous thing over here. I'm not really sure what that is. Someone was mentioning that there's potentially like going to be rocket launches and stuff like that, like some sort of NASA SpaceX type of thing going on, and the mention that some of them actually explode too, which is kind of interesting. So I found that pretty interesting in the research I was doing, but I know not much else. I do see that there's a couple buildings devoted to this, but this scene says a lot, but it doesn't say a lot in a visual format that I could really hang on to. Besides, you're just looking at it. There's the information that exists is really just already here. There's not much you could really say. I don't think there's a lot of hidden messages besides the rocket launches. But then we get another image of the female lead, right? And again, rooftop party. We have the skyline. Everything's kind of going on. We have this lady back here that's kind of looking at the camera, which is kind of awkward, but it's kind of funny. I did want to point that out. It starts off with her kind of not facing us, and she kind of turns towards us in this like kind of corkscrew pattern, and her hair flips out as well. Again, you can see her lips have lipstick on them, and she has makeup and accessories, and looking a little different. But she's still got her iconic hoop earrings on. You can really tell that that's her. I think that's the one unifying like semiotic visual that's gonna artifact in these images that's actually gonna like unify the entire narrative, right? That she looks different every time you look at her. By the way, every single person looks different every time you look at them, right? Everybody looks different. I find that pretty cool. Again, this image to me is very much so telling and showing at the same time, right? Anytime that someone includes any text in an image, it has to be deliberate. And this is a pure example of that. There's not much else you can really say. There's some stuff in the foreground. I mean, like this is the first frame that you really get. I didn't want to show much more, but yeah, you kind of see like an airport in the background, but yeah, whenever anyone uses text in a picture, it is what it is. Then it cuts to this like social media post. I think this guy's like a politician or something like that. And again, there's another airplane in the sky. They just keep they litter the sky with airplanes, I think. But here's a bottle of alcohol, someone's foot. I think that's pretty weird. There's a lot of women and an old guy. So I'm assuming this is a rich guy. Um, he's got like a gold chain, and it seems like he's got a gold watch, and he's got some hat, and there's a lot of American flags. I'm thinking he's either a proud American, very patriotic, just chilling with the women, or he's a politician, you know? And there's something kind of hanging over the side of the boat here, too. I don't know if that's naturally part of the boat or if that's like someone's bra or something. I'm not really sure what that is, but that's kind of interesting, whatever that is. It's a little Easter egg item, I guess. Here's another scene of that. I think it's obviously it's recorded on what seems to be a cell phone, and uh, the cell phone is stationary, but the boat is moving across the screen, which is an interesting kind of it's an interesting editing technique. There's also a guy with a man bun, and you can also see a couple more flags in the background. So pretty cool. All right. Again, we get this guy doing this. I think that there might be a karma system or something like that, where like these people are essentially using they're essentially they wear a uniform and they can actually work and do stuff, like, so that's what this guy's doing. He's wearing a uniform and he's pulling the alligator out of the pool, and that's a job. And I think that there's potential for you to follow this guy, and he'll do it a few more times and then go home after at the end of the day. And I think that might be a really interesting element to this game, that you might be able to follow someone all the way through, and that they look different, that they wear different gear every time, and that you could be this person, that you could role play this, that there'll be, that the maybe it's a lot harder to get money in this. And um, one of the ways is actually farming and doing things like this, and actually participating in the community. Another thing that this also says to me is that you can see that he's wearing a badge, and I'll point this out a little later, that I believe that the public services will have a bigger impact in the immersive value of the storyline, right? And I'll mention this later, but keep that in mind, that I think that the public services in this are going to have a much bigger impact in the narrative than a lot of people think. I think this might be something that's really cool. Like you might actually be able to be like an actual police officer, right? Or like a fireman, or a paramedic or something like that. And I'll point it out a little later. Again, we get this iconic scene, pretty cool. Hand looking a little fake. We got some people in the background wearing different clothes. Again, this is different person. Got building up here, some tropical plants. But this hand is looking a little fake. So that's just another nitpicky point out that I make, but that's all I gotta say. But yeah, get another close-up picture. I hope this is someone. I mean, I looked up all these things, like have a vice day or whatever, and I've seen nothing really. Like, it looks like a bunch of corny posts, but you also get a little image of this guy here too, and yeah, you get a little more resolved image, but I don't know who this guy is. I don't know who this lady is. It The main thing that you're really focusing on is this woman, and I wonder if she's any different. She does have tattoos on her left butt cheek, I guess. But yeah. All right. We get this scene. Pretty cool. I find it kind of interesting that there's also an image grain that they include. I'll mention that a little later. That they actually put filters on the cameras to potentially tell you something different about the narrative. But again, we see kind of like this street takeover scene. I think that's funny. It's fun. You can see that there's people doing, like, maybe you can come up on something like this and participate. Like, who knows? Like, this is cool. Then we get this scene. Again, for a minute, I was wondering if this was anyone like really important, and it might be, because this one is very, like, you can tell that there's a lot of comments and there's a lot of like love and stuff like that coming up. There's all these names, like Zaza Nugget and your girl, like there's that sort of stuff. So I did read these things. There's all these comments. Again, uh, you would not add text to something unless it bared some form of significance in the storyline, right? So that's one of the things that I keep, really hammering in, that this text actually means something. guess here's a couple still images, right? You know, we got R&R. I think that's kind of interesting. That might be like this person's initials. Who knows? I mean, I really don't know. Okay, then we have normal life here. We have alligator again, goes back. So again, just popping in that we go from one alligator to, and this lady, and to another. Is this lady this lady? No, maybe not. Um, well, yeah, you don't see the butt tattoos. Nope. Um, I wonder if it's a lady from the strip club though. There's some people back out here. Children? No, I don't think there's children. But there are some people out here. Let's just cut into a new scene. I don't know why I really did this. Maybe to show, this is another scene where everybody just looks a little different. It's mostly just showing off the wildlife again, but there was nothing I could really find in any of this. Like I really try to dissect this stuff. There's a guy in the background here who kind of turns around, right? There's some stuff going on here. So, I mean, there's some movement, but it's like really nothing that significant. Again, you can't see the shadows kind of popping up from the gator there, you know? Again, this is a CCTV. It cuts to another CCTV shot, which I thought was pretty interesting as well. And then we get these sort of figures. I'm not sure who they are. If maybe, and again, just if you didn't already notice this, so it's got a bunch of numbers here. They got some writing here. We have a mailbox that's overflowing with mail. We have someone peering through. We have a figure in the background that's kind of obscured, but we're actually looking through goggles, if you didn't notice that. So our point of view is goggles. So that's a really cool camera shot. So again, we get another sort of lens flare as he kicks open the door. All right, so we got another a lens flare, and we can see that actually you can see it like it actually glosses the entire right side of the screen. So we get this little obscured lens flare, kicks open the door. We get I don't know, it's slightly more clarified look of at least the figure, but the face you can see through here. And then we got the guy in the background who's obscured, and then this guy who is picking up a box. I'm not really sure what he's doing, but they're holding what looks like like a rifle, like something a little more edge to it. And then these guys are busting through. He's got a couple slings over his shoulders, and get a little more of a close up of this guy. Um, you can't really make out his face too well. I tried to, and it's just there's not really much to look at there. But we get again we got to look at this guy on the right hand side. Kind of make his face out a little bit. I'm sure it'll be a little more defined as things come out, right? But we'll see. Then there was some trash bag over here on the right. Not really sure. Body 3 of 4. How many guys were there? There's one guy who went first. There's this guy, and then there's this guy, right? And then of course the person in the foreground who has the gloves on. Still don't know who that is. Um, does he have the watch though? That was one of the questions that I'm gonna ask as we get a closer look at the second guy, right? But again, we see police officers. Not really sure if that has anything to do with it. We have this guy who's being chased by the police officers, which is pretty funny. So we go from a very serious, crime, right? Where these guys look like they are like maybe drug dealers or traffickers or something, right? Like they could be, these are bad guys. And then it goes to, some another fun-loving scene, right, that you would see on social media, big naked fat guy getting chased by a cop. And it even says down here, right, again, planet Leonida, I guess that's the state. That's supposed to be Florida. And okay, yeah, and then one of these, so it's a very quick frame, but you see two trucks. This will be seems like it might be bigger part later, the bigger part of the. But there's two frames where like there's just a big truck that just covers the screen. Why would they do that? You might ask yourself. I think that everything is very deliberate, especially you know, analyzing film, uh, working in film and those sort of things, every single frame has to be deliberate. I don't think that this truck crossing the front of the screen is a mistake. I think it was used to cut to this next scene. So we got this guy, and again, once again, we get a couple lens flares to show off the light. And here's a close up of this guy. He's, some sunburned dude with a tattoo on his left arm and potentially a tattoos on his chest and his other arm, right? Looks like he's wearing rain boots. He's got a nice sports car and he came out to do this. I'm not sure what his shirt says, but it might be like a band t-shirt or something, but yeah. And again, oh yeah, here's another lens flare. Pretty cool, right? This lens flare was pretty deliberate. Like the lens flare was from this one, by the way, was coming from the. So this is the car that has the camera in it, and it has its headlights are on, and it's reflecting off of the car in front of it. But also there's the two lights that we get from this what looks like a tow truck. So that's where the lens flare comes from. It's pretty interesting. There's also some writing up here. I don't know. Scene D, guys, whatever that means. So we got this scene here. It cuts to this one. There's a lot of decals on the truck. Again, the truck has a lot of reflecting stuff on it that I looked at in great detail, including the rear view mirror, actually, or whatever this is. Um, so I zoomed in on it. I'm not sure what it's recording here. It looks like a fire. It looks like a building engulfed in flames. I could be wrong. I mean, it could just be something else, but it doesn't show it in any. It literally only shows it for like 2 frames. Like this is the first frame it shows, and then that's the second one. So it's kind of small here, and then it gets bigger, and then it only shows this for the rest of it. So I don't know what that is. I thought it was kind of interesting. I wanted to point that out. That was something I saw. Again, not sure who this dude is, but seems pretty important. Or it seems like this is stuff you can do. I mean, you can just drive a car with your foot, right? That's kind of cool. Put your car in neutral or whatever. But it looks kind of cool. Like it looks like the clothing is a little more evolved and more interesting. It's more unique. It's definitely got a style to it, a culture. Tattoos. So it's got a much more relaxed vibe than what I've seen before. So I do think that's kind of interesting. Here's a close up. I don't think I saw anything else. This is just another close up. Yeah, I didn't really see anything else. There's some bungalows, that sort of thing. Like, who is this guy, right? Yeah, I just wanted to stop it here for a few seconds. Like, who is this guy? He's got a watch. He's got another watch. Let's keep going. So we got this guy, of course. Not sure. Is this the guy from the boat? I don't know. Is he just an old guy? Can you follow him? What's going on in this window? I don't know. It's kind of interesting. He's got a little one of those plastic pools in the background. Here's a close up of him too. This is about the most you see of his face. He's got one of those weird old man clear hats. It seems like he's retired or something, but he's got a lot to do. He's wearing shoes. He's wearing shoes and socks, and getting a suntan or something like that. I like it though. It's kind of interesting. I'm not entirely sure what this is. Like something that's really interesting about this scene is that it's shot from within a car as well. So that was something that really stuck out to me. Yeah, there we go. Pans to this, another social media post, whatever the Throwbilly Mud Club is, but I think that deliberate shot of the monster truck was probably this one back here, isn't it? Except this one has mud on it, and the windows are down. But we got a couple guys here just chilling with beers and that sort of thing. Got the lady, of course. We've got the American flag, draped on her chest area and her bosom. So that's pretty interesting and cool. Like it's kind of got like I mean that sends a message in itself. So that's why I really like this scene. It's interesting. But again, she's got the American flag on the back of her trucker hat. I wanted to mention that as well. So you can tell like this is America. There's American flags up there. The truck has American decals on it. So to me, this is like this is America, right? And then there's some dude in the back. I don't know. Is he the guy from earlier? Probably not. There's flags on the truck. So I don't know. This might be like a really fun thing, right? We have this person, which I think alludes to Neighborhood Watch. I think every person's going to be armed somehow. That might be a really interesting element that's going to be a lot harder to hurt and or be pursue and hurt, the NPCs basically, right? You know, like the background actors and that sort of thing. Like they'll have their own form of significance, and that they'll remember you as well. So like if you go in a place and you do something wrong, that these people will attempt to find retribution. And that's what this picture says to me, you know, that this is not just a joke. This is actually someone who is like, we're going to see a lot of this, you know, as we go throughout this world, right? That we're going to see a lot of people who are that you will be able to affect, and they in turn will treat you with either, you know, open arms, or they will attack you, right? So I found this pretty interesting. It's also a live feed. Who knows? I don't know what to say about that. That there might be something to that. That like this social media element is going to have like a whole, you know, a big footprint in the narrative, because it has such a big footprint in the narrative of our own lives. Then it does a smash cut. They do this smash cut of a guy jumping off of a truck into a table. There's not much that I really saw in this scene, except for there's like a little bit of cake in the background. There's a keg, but there's a hill up here. Do you see this? That part's really interesting. So there's a hill that kind of snakes over. You can see these cars that are kind of like looping over the contour of the hill. And that was a pretty interesting scene. I'm not entirely sure what to say about that. Um, it just people can make out other things about that, but that, I think that's kind of interesting. There's also some stuff in this guy. I'm not really sure what that is. But then it immediately pans down. We see some more cake, and the environment crashes upon this guy. So I wonder if it's something where the environment actually affects the people, right? Or the people affect the environment. You'll see things like that increase the immersion of the story. But yeah, let's get this guy, get a closer look at his face, by the way, just in case he matters for whatever reason. This guy might be like, I don't know, the brother, the boyfriend, the father, who knows? I mean, well, hopefully this guy's not a father, but yeah, I mean, let's move on. We get a couple signs over here on the right. Of course, this is from the point of view of the main character that we are we apparently think is the main character, right? But that's what the semiotics of the image and the entire thing has told us. But we also see a couple police cars. We see two different types of police cars, and then a third thing back here, which might be a semi truck. Oops, it might be a semi truck, but I don't know. It could be something else, right? It looks a little unique to me, but this scene says a lot in itself. Again, you know, there's something over here that cures emotions. Again, it's funny that everything is blurred except for the text. I think that anytime that they've included text, it's very deliberate. I'll say that a million times. Does this guy look like the guy, the mysterious man from earlier? Does this not? I think so. He's got the same brow line. He also has the bridge of his nose looks very similar as well. While we did not see the bottom half of his face earlier, um, we do now, I think, you know, and he's got the watch on his left hand, and that's something that's going to be pretty important. That's his defining feature. I think that's how you tell him apart from the other people. He has blue eyes. He's got short hair. I think in the other scene he had a little bit more of like a shaved head look. But he's got a little stubble in this. And again, I did want to point out a couple of things about the animation style that I noticed that his the bandana around his neck looks a little fake. It looks a little fake to me. I'm sorry. Looks, I don't know what to say. Although the ridge of the fabric does hold that shadow, that's pretty realistic. I don't know. I might just be a little nitpicky. But again, we get another view of Lucia. She's a very beautiful woman. I mean, you know, and that's why I think that she's the protagonist in the story, because you know when they cast these people, they really, you know, they go for like a very defined but, you know, good looking person, right? Like they always go for someone who's good looking. So you know they pick this act, you know, they pick this actress, right? And she is beautiful, you know. Like I'll go into a little more of analysis of what the face looks like, but we have, you know, again, we have the earrings. We have red, which says a lot in itself. That's a cool color. And yeah, we get another pan. This is the first time that you or this not the first time, but this is like one of the only times that you get like a full frontal of the face, right? And again, I didn't mention this earlier, but there's like some beauty marks. She looks different every time you see her, and look at that hand. That hand looks very fake to me. Sorry, I have to be, kind of a stickler on that, but the hand looks a little fake. So when I hear that they're gonna put some limitations on this, I think that there are. Again, I did analyze the back of the image on my own. I just really didn't see anything of significance. I'm sure there's people who do, but I didn't. I didn't see anything all that interesting. Again, we got the red bandana looking kind of cool. This is the first like real look at her face too, by the way, and you can see a little bit of like eyeshadow. So she's got a look to her, right? And again, just to analyze the face a little more, she's got this sort of round face, a couple beauty marks. Her nose is pretty rounded. She's got pretty big defined lips, and of course the hoop earrings and the ears that pop out. I think she makes. I think they really took a page from that book. But damn, look at that detail on the chair. Looks pretty good. Spent a lot of time on that. Here's another scene. Looking pretty good. Again, worry, and then feeling a little more complete. Like feeling like not worried, like relaxed, almost like rest assured, like we're passing the cops, they're getting away. So they put a little chase scene in there. I thought that was kind of interesting. I We've got this scene. Do I show it a little more? Yeah. All right. So what? Again, police cars look a little different than the ones that we saw before. Do want to mention that. So that alludes to maybe a gigantic landscape that might have multiple different police or law enforcement agencies. And we also have first responders. There's an emergency. So I think this might be something that like will increase the immersion of the narrative, is that uh, you'll be able to see the first responders like police officers, firefighters, paramedics. You're going to see these people saving people and actually doing stuff. And I think that that's something that's very interesting. Again, I'm not a big car guy, but looks like there's a lot of different cars in this scene. They spend a lot of time putting a lot of different cars in this scene. I think, once again, that's deliberate. I feel like I don't have to say anything about the Weasel News. I will say that one thing, it's 10 o'clock in the morning. Um, Once again, 10 o'clock in the morning comes up a few times in the narrative. So maybe all this stuff happens at once. I mean, who knows? Like, this is all within 30 minutes, right? So the big car crash, I don't know if it has anything to do with the car. The car from earlier was red, if I remember correctly. Um, but who knows? They're talking about someone who did a dine and dash, right? Let's click it. Let's go next. Next. All right, so then we get this guy. um, Vice-Dale County Deputy Sheriff, Sheriff's Office, Corrections. All right, so prison, prisoner, tattoos, eyes, purple hair. Very, very defining character, right? They put this thing here in Spanish, but basically what they're saying, that like he's got some neck tat that reveals some information. That's basically what this says. I don't know what else to say about that. Besides, there's a little semiotic thing going on back here. I do find that really interesting. So, a couple things. Let me break this down. So in the foreground, we have text that we may or may not be able to read. So this is going to have like a lot of do. So big thing here is that Spanish is going to be a big part of this. Spanish is going to be a really big part of this. So essentially, in Spanish, it says confession written in ink, right? Uh, for tattoos. I don't know. That's the direct translation or something like that. But essentially, he's got neck tattoos and it's telling some sort of story. Of course, it says impatient at the top. This is, the prisoner. He's waiting. He's behind walls. So it's almost as if you're the prisoner and you're waiting for this to release, right? But I was looking at the semiotics of this. It's funny that they put this gentleman on the right, but they put this in the center. And actually, in the center, they have a woman and a man. The man is being eaten by an alligator, and there's a tree, and there's snake coming from the tree. I think that this is Adam and Eve. It might be a little bit of a stretch, but when they have a snake in the tree and they have a man and a woman, and the man is being killed, and the woman is wearing red and standing there, I'm not sure. To me, it kind of has that. Another thing too, it has a sunrise sort of look happening in the background, and I'm not really sure what this figure is. Whether it's a boat, it could be a building, it could be a bridge. I'm not sure what that is, but I do find it kind of interesting. So there's a lot of semiotics happening here. I can't put it together beyond that, though. Again, everybody is wearing something different. Not only that, every vehicle looks different as well. Um, I took the liberty of capturing this frame, another skull, once again. I thought that was pretty cool. But they also, everybody, so here's a picture, a closer image of the decal with the eyeball and, some of the textures and that sort of stuff. Here's a couple lines on there. There's green. These are flashy. So they're all different. So essentially, I think everyone's going to look different. They're going to cast every single person in the environment's going to be wearing something completely different. That just has to happen. But not only that, the vehicles they drive are going to be different as well. So that's what that says to me. Okay, so we have this, what I presume is the same group driving through a police basically. We also see a Corvette here, and the person's getting pulled over by the police. There wasn't really much I saw besides there's a car over here that's kind of like pulled off to the side, and it's a utility vehicle. I didn't see much else. Yeah, they're moving. Nothing too out of the ordinary, right? And there's just a guy over here doing his thing. I did read all the stuff down here. Cops fail to stop thugs and motorbike terrorizing city. So, essentially, and again, it's 10:34. So all this stuff's happening at the same time, which I think is awesome. But yeah, that terrorizing essentially means that they've done this before and they're doing it again. And I think that's something that we get a little bit of a Robin Hood. Well, it might be a Robin Hood type thing. I mean, it might just be people having fun and the police are just crashing down on them. And it's interesting. It looks interesting, you know? There's a lot to be said there. Let's see. Mental patient wins if I see. Marathon. I don't know. There's nothing that really comes out to me. I don't think I remember. There was something with the text down here that I was trying to talk about, but I think I forgot what it was. I should have put some more notes down. Oh, there is I forgot. There's the Banshee up here. And oh, yeah, so again, this is alluding to the vehicles that we might see, right? I'm not a big car guy, but you know. Uh, Again, everyone's wearing something different. Who is this guy, right? This guy I think bears some significance. There's some records in the back here. Again, the license plates are all different. We have "Who hurt you?" We have some writing on the signs, so got some stuff. Oh, there's also a bridge in the background. I forgot. So that's how people have been able to kind of piece this together and tell you how big it is, and it seems pretty big. I've seen a lot of breakdowns on this, but again, pulling up things that people may or may not have mentioned, like who is this guy, and look at the tattoos. Again, clothing looks a little weird. I don't think clothing drapes over the arm that way. So it just, I don't know. I'm being nitpicky, but it doesn't look 100% like the best to me. Moving on, we have this scene. Again, we have Lucy on the left, and we've got the mysterious guy on the right. His hair looks a little weird. I don't think hair is shiny like that, unless it is, maybe. Looks little weird in that scene, but we've got the security camera, fish, beer. There's a lot of stuff. They're behind the counter. Oops, this frame's a little weird, but you can see the camera there. He's also holding a bunch of cash. But yeah, you can see their security system is back here. So I'm assuming, because in LA sometimes they put the liquor bottles behind the counter because I mean, people want to steal that stuff. So I'm wondering if they are actually behind the counter. That's kind of what it says to me, but I could be wrong because on the left-hand side, I do see some keychains and stuff like that. If not, they didn't do their research too well. I don't know. Either way, We get a close look at them doing their thing. So this scene's pretty interesting. We have a pawn shop, another pawn shop, and again another pawn shop. All right. Oh, and some words, right? Port Gelhorn, right? Something like that. So let's do that again. So essentially, there's a pawn shop here, and I believe that that's going to be a big part of this. That you can actually, that these mechanics of actually doing this stuff might actually be roped into having fun with this. There's a tower up here, like a big radio tower. I wonder if that's the one from earlier. But we have a car. We can see the tires and the wheel well, right? And it's kind of drifting over this. I think these are new mechanics, that they're trying to show off here. Again, this arm looks a little fake to me, gotta be honest. Again, we can closer look at the tires and the wheel well, stickers on the back. Oh, by the way, I was gonna say this is like a Mustang, but geez, did they make the Mustang with the extra door in the back like this? I don't think I've seen it, or at least the one I rode in did not have this on the back. You had to open the front door and then kind of sit in through the back, whatever that's called. So then, you know, beams over another another big bright spot, right? Lens flare as it speeds off with a lot of dirt going in your face. You can see reflective values and just goes down the road. Another thing too, 55 peeking right through that window. It's really interesting how quick these frames kind of move. I mean, you could really see it, right? Really get a snapshot of this. But yeah, it's like out of frame. I don't think I put it on this presentation, but it's a little out of frame. Oof, going overtime. All right. I got to go a little faster. Uh, we have this scene where the the woman is looking at the man, and she has in the high radical scale, she's a little bit above him, which again tells me that she's the main character. She has the hoops. She's wearing the black tank top. She's looking, in this lighting, she's looking pretty good. It's got a whole thing going on. They're obviously in love, or something like that. And it's a scene about trust. You know, they're asking if they can trust each other. And Hand looking super fake, but still holding that little bracelet there, which might be the woman in the car, right? But again, there's some money on the table. There's a remote and an empty beer. So is this is this a bond through those things, right? Through vices, or is this like an actual real bond and they actually have to trust each other? There's not much else that could be said. There's a picture back here, but it's obscured. Everything else is obscured. They're obviously in a hotel room. Like this just looks like a hotel room. It doesn't look lived in, so it looks a little clean. But these are things that kind of stick out to me as far as the image goes. They kick the door open. So immediately after this scene occurs. So they kick the door open, and I find it interesting that she's wearing darker clothing and red, and he's immediately pushed into the background of this image. So you can see there's something going on in the bottom of the car over there, and the car door is swung open. But you can see they're pointing in two different ways. This is like the iconic scene uh, uh, from the Quentin Tarantino movie. I forget what it's called, but there's that scene where they're kind of pointing in two different directions. But check this out. After they say that they trust each other, they almost defend each other. So like he's looking that way, she's looking this way, and in this entire scene, they don't even look at each other's, area. So they trust each other without even, so there's a high level of trust that's happening in this story. So that's one of those things that I really noticed from this one, is that like first off, there's less emphasis on the man, right? He's got kind of a darker color. He very much so blends into the background in this, and she's very much so like even though that this part is foreshortened, it's very like she's the star of the show. Legs looking a little weird. Not gonna lie, looking a little weird. Um, right. Okay, and then it kind of darkens out, and we get this. That's pretty much it. I was able to finish in about an hour. So thank you for listening, guys. All right, that's the frame by frame analysis.
This is me, in the Rio Grande River, hopping the border between Mexico and the United States. Just last year alone, over 2 million migrants entered the US this way. And despite Texas trying to stop them with razor wire, floating barriers, and warning signs, hundreds, if not thousands, still cross every single day. And many, unfortunately, do not survive.
Hundreds of migrants have died trying to make a similar journey. A lot more have been stopped by US border police.
But rarely, if not ever, has this process actually been documented from a first-person perspective. So we, as legal American citizens, decided to put ourselves in the shoes of the migrant, at least for the final chapter of their journey, and cross the river ourselves. This would prove to be not the best idea.
One hand, I'll grab you with the other.
Just a few seconds after crossing back into the US, the coyotes we traveled with told us to get down. And as I laid down in the fetal position in the dirt, I could hear the sound of tires coming to a halt and gravel crackling on the road.
Manos arriba. Ven pa' acá, usted.
Speak English.
Hands up. Speak English?
Yeah.
Get up. Let me see your hands. Got any guns on you?
No, sir.
Face away from me.
We're journalists.
Usted, manos arriba. Bájate. Súbete. You too. You speak English?
Yeah.
Stand up.
As it turned out, United States Border Patrol had been following us for the past hour using infrared heat sensor cameras from boats. Just a minute later, we were placed under arrest, handcuffed, and put in the back of a Border Patrol vehicle. The agents, however, remained on scene to collect our belongings. And by some miracle of God, they forgot to turn off the cameras or confiscate our SD cards, which is how you're able to see this footage. We thought we were going to be fine. I mean, truth be told, we didn't think what we did was illegal. But oh boy, were we wrong. We spent the next 4 days locked up as detainees at a migrant processing center in Eagle Pass, Texas. We weren't given a phone call until 48 hours after our detention. But thankfully, we'd brought along 2 additional videographers for this particular shoot, who were stationed safe and sound on the American side while we crossed the river. Here is their story.
My name is Juan Jimenez.
I'm Elliot Liedgren.
And we got brought on to do some B-roll and film for Channel 5. All of us were like so extremely confident, like we're gonna get this crazy video of what people go through like every fucking day.
This is 250 calories to prevent me from dying of hunger. And then this is a knife to maybe cut through weeds up there.
And we were just like excited. I think we were all excited to like be able to get that footage. But yeah, Andrew and Susan went to jail.
All right, so turns out you actually can't do that. So if you're watching this, don't do what I did.
It's a federal offense called failure to report,
AKA illegal entry to the United States.
punishable by up to 1 year in federal prison and or $5,000 in fines.
You can only enter the United States through an official port of entry with a customs agent there. Even if you're an American citizen, you cannot hop the border into your own country.
It took a lot longer, honestly, than I initially thought. I mean, I think we were on the other side 2-3 hours or something.
Yeah,
like
at
that.
least. So we had their location, and I was like looking at it, and you guys were moving like super slow, but we were rooting for you, you know what I mean? Like, oh fuck, they're probably like, I'm imagining you guys like, you know, crawling through the brush and shit, like fighting off like snakes and scorpions and shit, but
we kept checking like every...
just refreshing,
probably,
just
like 10 minutes just being, all right, like, oh, the boys are moving.
They get to the Rio Grande, and we're like, fuck yeah, they made it to the fucking river, you know? And slowly see them cross. America, fuck yeah, they made it. And they get to the other side, and they're just like motionless for like, gotta be like 15, 20 minutes, and I was like, word, like, you know, again, envisioning them just like waiting for the BP truck to go by and like, you know, just hiding out. Like 15, 20, 30 minutes, like it was like, all right, like, fuck's going on here? And then boom, speeding up the highway. And then all of a sudden it was like, bam, like Eagle Pass, South Texas Border Patrol Station. I was like, fuck, bro.
As soon as the Border Patrol agent apprehended us right across the river, both the coyotes who brought us across jumped back in the river, swim back toward Mexico.
Come back, over here. Get over here.
This left us alone in Border Patrol custody.
So I just told them exactly, what was up. I told them, hey, we're journalists. We're trying to interview some migrants. We interviewed some people on the Mexican side. We just interviewed those guys that brought us across, but we don't actually know who they are, which is true. So they were actually pretty cool. Like the Border Patrol agents, if I remember correctly, they were like understanding. They just said, okay, we're going to take you to the facility. We're going to run your IDs, run your name, make sure you have no criminal charges. And then once we check for that, you guys will be good to go. So we thought it was going to be fine. So we get there to the Border Patrol facility. They take the shoelaces out of our shoes, give us flip-flops, give me this blue outfit, and we walk in. It kind of looks like a DMV or a Department of Licensing, depending on which state you're in. So you know how it is. It's like you got 6 computers behind this like Citadel type center complex. Everyone's typing away, running people's names and shit. We're just sitting there waiting. You know what I mean? So I go up there, they take my fingerprint, they take a picture of me, they ask me a couple basic questions. What were you doing in Mexico? Have you ever been to North Korea? Like, have you ever been to Russia before? Random shit to see if I was like a spy. They were like, and then he was like, all right, cool, sounds good. We'll talk to you in a second. So I sit on one of the benches right there. I'm just waiting to be released, obviously, because I'm like, oh, once they figure out that we are journalists, I was like, look up our channel. You'll see what we do. Like, we meant no ill intent. It's all good. So the Border Patrol dudes start telling me these stories about how they've had to rescue drowning children and how they've had to discover dead bodies floating in the river and just all these traumatic incidents that their job entails, and how they felt like we were kind of making a mockery of their job and the risk associated by trying to cross, which I was sympathetic to. Looking back, I think we did go a bit beyond what is safe and acceptable, but I wanted to get the story, so I figured it made sense at the time. But looking back, I probably wouldn't do it again. I do my interview. Behind me,
So we are in a weird time in the generation, okay? Because it looks like there's a strong possibility that for the first time in a long time, I don't even know when the last time this would be maybe turn of the century. For the first time in a long time, we very likely will see a split in the console generation timelines. What does that mean? It means that we probably have the next generation of Xbox consoles a year or two before the PlayStation 6. And that's crazy because traditionally they release alongside each other, and it makes it easier for like multi-plat developers because they can be like, okay, the power levels will be roughly the same. So if we're developing Call of Duty for PlayStation and Xbox, we basically can achieve the same things roughly. It's just on 2 different platforms. But in terms of power and everything, they're roughly the same. But what's being claimed is that the next Call of Duty 22, sorry, I guess not technically the next Call of Duty for 2026 is being developed for the next generation of Xbox. It's been claimed that Call of Duty 2026, which is assumed to be another Modern Warfare title, is in development for the next generation Xbox. That's according to reputable Call of Duty leaker, the Ghost of Hope, who took to X, formerly Twitter. I find it funny they still have to write formerly Twitter, to break the news after it was announced that Season 3 of Black Ops 6 would be delayed until April. According to Hope, the 2026 title is not being developed for past generation consoles, unlike Call of Duty 2025. So they're going to drop Xbox One and PS4 finally, and is being developed for the next generation of Xbox. So still technically cross-generational. Isn't that funny? Clever. If true, this could be our first real hint that the next-gen Xbox could release around fall of 2026. Also pointed out by Hope is that apparently if Verdansk does not bring players back to Call of Duty Warzone, a third game in the free-to-play Battle Royale will not release. So a lot is hinging on Verdansk. Officially, Activision nor Microsoft have released any information on Call of Duty 2026 or even Call of Duty 2025 at this point in time, but according to our sources, the next game in the Call of Duty franchise is a Black Ops 2 sequel headed once again by Treyarch, following rough internal decisions that saw Sledgehammer Games wanting to develop their own fully fledged Call of Duty title for 2027. As always, take such rumors with a grain of salt. But Call of Duty 2026 being in development for the next-gen Xbox consoles is an interesting tidbit of information, if true. Specifically, this Ghost of Hope individual has a history of releasing a bunch of accurate information, specifically with Call of Duty. So there's a strong chance that this is actually being said to him. But why this is really interesting is because in order to develop your game for the next generation Xbox console, there has to be a next generation Xbox console. And it has to be out for people to play it. And Call of Duty typically comes out in November, which would mean that the console, if this were a launch title for it, would probably be out in like November, which would be crazy because we know that PlayStation is looking probably more like 2028, 2027, 2028 before we get the PlayStation 6. The PS5 Pro is their mid-gen refresh. And that, you know, if it's truly mid-gen, that means another like 4 years, which would put it 2028 for the next gen. So you could, by late 2026, be in a spot where Xbox has far and away the most powerful console on the market, which would be very, very interesting. Because then what you'll see is like a shift in a lot of these multi-platform marketing cycles and plans. Because a lot of these devs will then have to shift and start really prioritizing like marketing through Xbox. Because if they want their game to look the best that it can on console, they're going to do their trailers on Xbox platforms. It's why having the most powerful console, or at least a version of your console that's the most powerful console, is important for marketing. Because even now, like there were whole stories on Monster Hunter where it's like, yeah, if you're going to play Monster Hunter on console, the best place is PS5 Pro. You'd hope so. It's the most expensive console. It better be the best place to play. But nonetheless, that's a ton of extra marketing dollars. That's a ton of extra earned media. That's a ton of people potentially buying a PS5 Pro just to get access to that. It wouldn't be a surprise to me if that actually starts to move the needle a little bit. And it also, I mean, there's the other story where, of course, the rumors are that Xbox is working on a handheld as well. Maybe that materializes. Maybe this is the handheld. Probably not, because they're describing it as next generation, but we know they're working on that. We've also heard like rumblings that Xbox was investigating doing adaptive triggers as well, and maybe that's a feature that they bring similar to the PS5, but they bring it to the next generation of Xbox controllers as well. So it might just be one of those things where Xbox is like, yeah, this gen didn't light the world on fire, but now we've got a lot of games coming, so let's now, with our whole library and Game Pass, let's launch the next era of hardware and just hit the ground running. You know, and maybe they do their mid-gen refresh when PS5 moves to PS6. And so maybe they do it that way. But the point is, all this gets really, really weird if these consoles get staggered. It gets really, really, really weird because historically they always launch around the same time, and then you get to choose which console you want, PlayStation or Xbox. And that's, you buy the one that you and your friends are going to play on, and you're going to make your commitment at that point. But maybe Xbox's plan is just like, hey, if people are going to keep choosing PlayStation over Xbox, why go head to head if we don't need to? Maybe instead we just release our next gen console a year or two before they do, and we just get to chill all alone. Devs would hate that. No. If they're dropping Xbox Series X and S mandated support, then I don't think devs hate it. It'll just make it so like developing your game means that you have a ton of extra headroom if you're going to bring it to Xbox. I think devs would be fine with that. The problem would be if they release this next gen Xbox and then they specifically say that like, oh yeah, you also still have to launch on the Series S. Then it becomes a big headache, I think, because it's like, oh my God, we still have to deal with that. Okay. Then I think it's a headache. But I think if they are able to do this in a way that is specifically trying to move forward and raise the ceiling on performance, then I think devs will be fine with it. What was interesting about this is that Juicehead, YouTuber that covers like a lot of RPGs, like Bethesda, stuff like that, he said one of the big reasons I think we could see Elder Scrolls 6 in 2026 is if there is a push internally for it to be a launch title for the next gen Xbox. That seems like a marketing deal for Xbox. And I understand the sentiment, because the idea is if they can get ES6 out in like November or December of 2026, it's a launch title for the next generation Xbox. It's probably exclusive to that hardware, at least for 6 months or so. And that actually could move copies. If you have Call of Duty and Elder Scrolls 6 as exclusives for that platform, I think that does help move a lot of copies. I mean, never underestimate the power of Elder Scrolls. But is this realistically what's possible? Based on my understanding of Bethesda's development practices, I would be shocked if they were able to do that. Because we had, like, if we draw out our little timeline. Let's go 2011. Okay. 2011, you have Elder Scrolls. Sorry, I'm out of practice. 5 Skyrim. 2015, you have Fallout 4. So this is only a 4-year gap. That's not that bad, right? So it's a tight turnaround, but this was also like late 2011, late 2015 when it actually launched, but still 4 years. That's doable. And then 2018, we had, of course, Fallout 76, and this has kind of changed over the years, because when it initially launched and was a disaster, you heard a lot of like Bethesda defenders saying, no. This was done by by Bethesda Game Studios Austin, a separate team. The Maryland studio didn't really work on it. But later, we actually heard many interviews and many discussions of how the Maryland team did a ton of work on Fallout 76. So, you know, they weren't just working on Starfield like for this whole time from 2015 through 2023. They were actually doing a ton of work on Fallout 76. So like it wasn't actually true that you know, this was a totally isolated thing. So that actually helps with this argument though, because that means in 2023, we got Starfart. And so they spent about 5 years realistically working on Starfield in full. I mean, they were doing some work back here as well. Of course, there were some leaks around this time of early production work that was happening, but full production started after 2018 when the team fully freed up. And then that leads us to, of course, Elder Scrolls 6, which is somewhere. Realistically, 2026, only 3 years. You know, if we put it like right here, that would be really, really surprising. They are bigger than they've ever been. They are like, they have more money than they ever have, but that's not been the bottleneck for Bethesda. The bottleneck for Bethesda has been that for some reason they have massive inefficiencies within their company. And we've seen that with the discussions of the devs, where, for example, we watched on stream, we saw some of the devs talking about this. So Will Shen, who was in a bunch of the marketing materials for Starfield, he's gone. He left. He's at another team. He's doing his other thing. And this is what's so fascinating. This whole talk is basically one gigantic breakdown of things that weren't working quite right at Bethesda. And I mean, they make it out like, as you can see here, I'll let him introduce the slide. Here, I'll let him describe it.
So by the time we ship Starfield, we have grown even more, probably by about the same amount from Fallout 4 to Fallout 76. As you can see here, well over 500 people. But also, we are now working with a large number of external groups, well over a dozen. And these groups are doing everything from effects, lighting, they're working on tools programming, systems programming, pretty much everything. And they have to all be integrated into the development team for the work they are doing. And another part of this is these are external groups, each with their own culture, each with their own leadership, and they are being brought in at various times throughout production, sometimes early on, sometimes to finish it.
Isn't that crazy? Like, isn't that insane? Look how much they'd grown. And yet you wouldn't think, based on the final outcomes and volume of content, the efficiency of fixes and all that, you would not assume that like Starfield had this many devs compared to these other games. It feels like their output has actually dropped since like Fallout 4, and yet they have way more people. Too many cooks? I think it's a lot of cooks, and I think it's also a lot of bureaucracy, and that's kind of what he goes through in this talk. Department over project. He talks about the need for approvals, for layers of double checks from various producers and stuff. And he's like, it's just really inefficient. And this is something that we've also talked about a bajillion times with the CDPR talk. This one
areas and pieces of content
about how they fixed those problems, because that was the exact same problem they had at CDPR, which led to the drama of Cyberpunk 2077's launch, where it was just super broken. There were tons of inefficiencies in the dev cycles because they grew before they grew the infrastructure for handling how many people they had. So they redid it and instead focused on cross-functional teams where they had members of each individual department that could individually work on their own sections of the game, or in this case, Phantom Liberty. And it led to greater efficiency, and that's why you play Phantom Liberty, and it feels like it's already such a massive step up from like even the base game in terms of how much they were able to put together and how quickly they were. The big set pieces, the boss fights, everything was totally overhauled. And I think that BGS needs an overhaul like this to get to a level of efficiency that they really need. But that's the thing is, if we're looking at a 2026 release date for Elder Scrolls 6, I think we're dealing with, like, you would have to have seen this overall happen. You would have to see their efficiency go up, because bear in mind, between 2023 and 2024, they released Shattered Space in 24, which was roundly panned by critics and players alike for being short, for lacking significant new content, and for basically just being a slight continuation of the base game with nothing really fresh and a bunch of other stuff that was broken. And they added the rover too. They added a rover. I'll give them credit for that. But they spent a year doing all of that. And obviously, like, it's not their whole team working on that, but you would think if they had an entire year, they could do more. Especially when you remember that after Fallout 4, within a single year, they had put out the Far Harbor expansion, they had put out the Nuka World expansion, all the other little DLC. Back here, they did that's the worst arrow I've ever drawn. Back here, they did way more in terms of volume of content just in that time period compared to what they were able to do after Starfield. Despite back here, the number of people working on those DLCs and expansions was tiny compared to what they have for Starfield now, which is this massive operation. And so I think for Starfield, the key problem is inefficiencies, and that's something reflected in these talks that they give, and the devs that have left have described. They leave, and of course they're friendly and amicable, and they'll talk about the amazing people that are there and their friends because they worked at the place and they like the people there. But you don't do an hour-long talk at GDC where primarily you're outlining like all the frustrations and difficulties you had. Like, there's a lot of material in here outlining all of this, and it's fascinating to look at. Large teams, silo, and need project-centered goals. Yeah, it's basically a breakdown of why the mismanagement led to inefficiencies, and it's a fascinating talk. But I mean, for Elder Scrolls 6 to come out in 2026, I think they would need to do a major overhaul of how they actually work and how they develop and how they go through these layers of refinement and polish and stuff, and I just don't frankly see it. I think there's a strong chance we see Elder Scrolls 6 like 2027, maybe 2028. I think that's a stretch, but possible. 4 years, I think, is the minimum for Elder Scrolls 6. Maybe we get another trailer or something, you know, around the launch of whatever that new hardware is. But if they could get Elder Scrolls 6 out in 3 years, I don't think it would be the game that we would be hoping for. I think a BGS game in the modern day, with their modern teams and everything, a BGS game that's only been cooking for 3 years, I think is very underbaked. I would love to be wrong. I would love for them to blow me away and come out with a monster project, and they just figured out all their efficiencies. They're just brimming with, or what was it? Glowing with style and confidence. I would love that. But for them to hit that 2026 release date would mean that they basically turn the game around in 3 years. And if you're looking at the sheer number of developers they have, you'd think maybe that's possible, because you're like, hey, back in the day, you had Skyrim developed with this many people. So if we have this many people now, if we had this many people with Skyrim, and we just need to do that again, but in the modern day, with this many people, we should be able to do it 3 times as fast, right? Well, unfortunately, that's not how that works. But, you know, their efficiency has gone down, or at least stayed the same, you know, if you're being super generous. But it seems like they just do not work anywhere near as dynamically as they used to. Anyway, I appreciate the optimism, and I understand what Juice had saying, where he thinks it could make sense if they really wanted to push it for 2026. I just think a Bethesda project in 2026 would be very underbaked based on what I've seen from their capabilities, but I guess time will tell.
He took my thing. Red flag, red flag.
Third places, the places we go to converse with others and connect with our community outside of school and work. For some, it's a cafe. For others, it's the gym. But for the majority of us Americans, it's some random parking lot you and your friends always end up at one point in the night. Now, this wouldn't be the case if we had places to go, but if you don't live in a major city, your options for a third place are very limited. To make matters worse, since the 2000s, third places have been disappearing, leaving us to hang out in cramped apartments and boba shop parking lots. Today, I'm going to be going over the current state of third places, why they disappeared, and of course, why they mattered in the first place. Works for me. I'm just getting texts from my friends about what we're going to do today. I'm going to hang out to be in the majority of third places, which has always been a thing, but I feel like it's more prevalent now. When getting together with friends, you usually just default to grabbing food together. Not only is it a pain to find a place that no one associates with food poisoning trauma, but food is just so expensive now. It's not even funny. I don't have a joke for this. I'm just gonna move on. Speaking of expensive, a really popular third place now is boba shops. And if you're a little bit older and you don't know what a boba shop is, it's basically a frozen yogurt place, but the inside doesn't look like Pee Wee Herman's house or the Simpsons household. I used to go to a local boba place all the time until I realized the price of boba and the sugar content were racing each other to see who would be first to bankrupt me or kill me, respectively. Another paid option is the gym, but I don't know, man. It always felt awkward having a conversation with someone while they're in the middle of the most intense set of hip thrusts. So that Chapel Roan Grammy performance was pretty good. I'm gonna wait for you over here. I don't like this eye contact thing we're doing, dude. If you're savvy, you can find places to hang out at for free, but those aren't without their flaws as well. Something I like is the mall, obviously. You can walk around, watch your friends shop, or converse with the employees. Would be pretty sick if Paul Blart was here right now. I also like going to Guitar Center to mess around on every instrument in existence, but it feels weird doing that too often. They know I'm never gonna buy anything, and I feel like they don't appreciate all the 80s rock riffs I learned to impress them. Like they almost get mad when I play Sweet Child of Mine to brighten their day a little bit. Sometimes instruments just aren't doing it, and you want to play with something that's alive. That's why pet stores exist. I go to a local bird store every once in a while, and it's really fun when there isn't a big-ass bird practicing its eardrum shattering techniques. I realize you didn't come here for a tour guide perspective on cheap and fun day ideas, so I should probably move on. But first, I gotta mention the park that is like the default free third place, or the library too, but you can't scream in there, so it's just not fun. If you work until 5, like the majority of people, you have about 20 minutes to get anywhere if you want to get there before closing time. Shoot, did I forget my... Oh, no, I got it. Damn it! This is one of the to tie your shoelace on the way there. During COVID, a lot of places cut their hours back. Someone get these people a newspaper. That shit's over. You can close past 10 again. Since you found your way to 8 p.m., sometimes when you're done with the main activity of the hangout, you and the boys finished building the Jelkinator, you want to grab a bite or just get out of the 200-degree apartment. You have like 4 options at this point in the night. Number 1, you can go to a bar with a prowling cougar, and I don't mean like the cool wildcat kind. Number 2, you can go to a gas station for a granola bar and chocolate milk and potentially a switchblade in your abdomen. Number 3, you can go to a drive-thru where you will never get what you order. You're just going up, basically pressing shuffle on the entire menu and praying you get something edible. Or number 4, you can go to Denny's because your local diner never fixed their shortened COVID hours. Now, if you want to go with number 4, I hope you read The Art of Persuasion beforehand, because it is such a pain to convince people to go to Denny's. I don't know why no one wants to go. It's not my fault you tried ordering hollandaise sauce before at Denny's and it tasted like battery acid. This is Denny's. You don't take risks here. If you somehow happen to have money and you found a place that's open past 3 p.m., you still have another hurdle to get past to enjoy a third place. Since the 2000s, more and more places have been getting rid of their seating options or going fully takeout only. and this has only gotten worse because of COVID. Apparently, I'm the only person in the world who has this gripe, but I'm gonna share it anyways to see if there are other sane people out there. I will never order a full I will never order food at a restaurant and then take it home and eat it. If I want to eat at home, I will just cook food. Except pizza. Pizza's the exception to this rule. Why would I pay restaurant prices and not enjoy the experience of eating out with others? Plus, the food is soggy by the time you get home, and it comes in all these shitty containers, food, or wait for the delivery, as it does to just get off your lazy ass and cook. And that's coming from me. I am a lazy ass with a big heart who likes long walks on the beach. Either eat out or don't. Why are you doing this half-assed experience of eating soggy Olive Garden at home? Staying on the topic of COVID-related reasons, some places decided to start using half their restaurant as storage space and then never bothered restoring their tables so you can only get takeout. Guys, there are other places you can rent. You don't need to have this whole seating area if you're not. Were chill and the food was delectable. The Target Cafe. For the past 10 years, this wonder of a third place has been ripped out of Targets across the nation and replaced with Starbucks, because 3 Starbucks per square mile just wasn't enough. I never got to truly experience this, so I'm a little bitter. You had Pizza Hut Express, fresh popcorn, pretzels, ices, and more, all in the same place. You didn't have to wait to be seated, and if you realized, oh shoot, I gotta pick up deodorant because I gotta, and then come back to the hangout. Target cafes still exist here and there, but almost, I think all of the ones by me are just Starbucks now. When I was younger, my mom would promise to get me the popcorn from the Target cafe if I was a good little boy during our shopping trip, and I don't know if I was just really forgetful and she would get us to slip out before I realized, or if I was a really bad kid, but I got to have that popcorn like thrice in my life. With the way the world has changed in the past few years, it's obvious why these third places are dying out. First of all, they're expensive to keep. If people are still gonna order your food or product, why waste money on furniture, its upkeep, the labor, and all the other things associated with having a seating area? Plus, your rent is cheap. The lack of seats also leads to less loitering, and it keeps out the bad crowd that you don't want hanging out in your store, which leads us to our second reason. It prevents loitering, and it keeps out the homeless guy who wants a cup of water mess and leave you to clean up the silly string and the overpriced streetwear brand stickers they leave behind. I watched a kid accidentally smash a sort of way. The third reason, and probably the big, they have a home gym, a home arcade, a home theater, a home library, a home boy, and a home office. If you do want to work outside the house, you just go to a cafe, which is why Target committed this crime against humanity. People don't need third places anymore. So they think. If you've been alive for the past 5 years, you know all too well that third places matter. Our second place, which is rising and open hours being cut back, it's getting increasingly difficult to go out. But it's still important to do so. Third places matter because, first of all, they get you out of the house. Working, relaxing, and sleeping all in the same place messes with your head. Humans are not used to that. Can you imagine the world's smartest man 1,000 years ago? He would have a super long stick so he could plow the fields from the comfort of his potato sack bed. The second reason is that going to third places helps local businesses. Sure, a lot of the places I mentioned were huge corporations, but local cafes, shopping centers, libraries, pet stores, and I don't know, comic book shops still exist. They really need your help now more than ever. And third places let you connect with others, usually with the same interests. After you finish school, making friends is no longer about having matching pencils or playing the same flash game during a lecture. You gotta go out of your way to meet people. Third places are important to the human experience. I feel like I'm in The Shining on days where I just stay at home and work all day. I go to the library every week to get out of the house while working, and I'm looking to branch off into different working spaces, so if you have any recommendations, please leave them in the comments. I visited New York City last year and was so hyped about all the places you can sit and how the city is basically designed to keep the hangout going. They got free seating throughout the whole city called stoops. If I sat on the steps of someone's house here, I would have 2 holes in my chest, a lawsuit against me, and I would be getting cyberbullied, when the Nest camera footage of me drops on Facebook. I want my Monk's Cafe or Groovy Smoothie that doesn't close at 9 p.m. But I guess until I find that, I'll be hanging out in parking lots and Denny's with my friends when we accidentally take too long buckling our seatbelts on the way somewhere. I got an Instagram now. Follow that at chon.digital. I also got clothes and other stuff coming soon, so just type chon.digital straight into your browser. We are at 18,000 subscribers at the time of this recording, so thank you for whatever milestone we end up hitting by the time this comes out. Freak Nation has really been rising up. Chondle that subscribe button for videos about basically anything, and thank you for watching.
Our main story tonight concerns cars, where golf carts see themselves in 5 years. Specifically, we're going to talk about traffic stops, the most common law enforcement interaction in America. Police pull over more than 50,000 drivers on a typical day, adding up to more than 20 million motorists a year. And they do so for all sorts of reasons, from speeding to broken taillights to spectacularly this.
The way he came up to the truck, I knew. I was like, oh, I done pissed this man off. He's mad about something. You're under arrest. And I was like, for what? For what did I do?
The reason I'm pulling you over is your derogatory sticker on the back of your truck.
Words.
It's words, okay? What does those words mean?
It's ass.
I eat ass, okay?
If I told you I went to jail for a sticker, yeah, whatever, dude. Like, you're not gonna believe that.
All in capital letters. I eat ass.
Yes. Every part of that is excellent, very much including the Ask Me About My First Amendment Rights t-shirt, which is a masterclass in personal branding, though I'm just going to say it. That guy doesn't strike me as a real eater. Don't get me wrong, I'm sure he's enthusiastic, but attentive and willing to follow directions? Absolutely not. But as you undoubtedly know, not all traffic stops make the news because they're ridiculous. Sometimes it's because they end in violence. Since 2017, police have killed at least 813 people during traffic stops, with black people disproportionately impacted, making up 29% of those killed, despite representing only around 14% of the population. We've all seen the videos of high-profile killings like those of Philando Castile, Dante Wright, or Tyree Nichols. The horror of those videos should be seared into our collective consciousness by now, so I'm not going to be playing any of that footage tonight. And for black people in particular, those incidents have highlighted what they already know only too well, that driving comes with a constant undercurrent of fear.
What does it mean to drive while black?
Driving scared. Every time you get in your vehicle, you're scared. Because if any cop gets behind you, if you ask any African American, our hearts instantly drop.
It means to drive around in fear. It means to drive around and also hope.
What's the hope?
Hope that we make it home safe.
How do you think your life would be different if you were a white dude?
For driving purposes, I wouldn't worry every time I see a cop.
Look, there are lots of things people have to worry about while driving. Getting lost, getting into an accident, getting stopped by a crosswalk flash mob where James Corden thrusts at your car while dressed like a large mouse. All real and upsetting possibilities, but no one should also have to worry about getting harassed or potentially killed. And while the incidents that give rise to that fear often get discussed as the result of individual bad apple cops, the truth is that the inevitable result of deliberate decisions that have turned traffic stops into a systemic issue. So tonight, let's talk about traffic stops, the power we've given to cops during them, how they exercise and often abuse that power, and some simple ways we can start to change all this. And let's start by acknowledging that police do pull people over for completely legitimate road safety reasons, like dangerous speeding or drunk driving, and you want those people off the roads. You don't need me to show you a clip about the importance of road safety, but I'm going to do that anyway, because when else am I going to have the chance to show you this?
An accident! An accident! An accident! The humans had an accident.
There was a child in the car.
A child? A child?
A child? Cats have 9 lives, children only one. Help them live that life. Buckle them into a car seat. No one wants a child to become a memory.
Well, that was a lot. I'd was forgotten all those weird characters from Cats like Angelica Splat, Turnip, Zazzle Skunk, Old Colostomy, Skeetle Jizz, Nipple Twister, and Mr. Bumblefuck. I don't remember their real names, but I'm pretty sure that's close enough. And let me just say this, that musical is an abomination. If there is ever a day that Andrew Lloyd Webber has no haters, that means that I am dead, and so, by the way, is Patti LuPone. But of course, that ad is completely right. You don't want someone driving unsafely to claim the life of a child. A child. A child. But the truth is, lots of stops aren't about safety at all. In fact, many are so-called pretextual stops. Basically, the police using a minor traffic violation to detain you while they investigate for further evidence of crimes like illegal guns or drugs. And they have a lot of leeway to do that. Because when it comes to searching your house, the Fourth Amendment generally requires police get a warrant approved by a judge beforehand. But when it comes to cars, the courts decided that because cars can drive away, requiring a warrant is impractical. So over the years, the Supreme Court's given police wide discretion in how a traffic stop is handled. And in 1996, in Wren versus the US, it fully legalized pretextual stops, unanimously ruling that the constitutional reasonableness of a stop did not depend on the actual motivations of the individual officers involved. Essentially, as long as police have evidence of a traffic violation, however minor, they can use a simple stop to start a criminal investigation. And what this means in practice is that a lot of stops now amount to just shaking people down to see what crimes fall out. One of the popular manuals for training police in traffic investigations flat out states, criminal patrol in large part is a numbers game, and you need a lot of contacts to find the relatively few felony offenders you're most interested in. One former officer has even admitted, "We fish. If I follow a car for 5 minutes, I can always find 1 or 2 moving violations." And that is true. There are so many laws on the books, a cop can always find a reason to pull someone over.
Experts say finding the initial reason to pull someone over is easy. That became quickly apparent during an afternoon with an officer of the Oakland, California Police Department.
This Infiniti that drove by has a bumper that's loose. That's a vehicle code violation. All lights must work, right? So his top brake light does not work, so I can stop him for that.
Right, and it's not just loose bumpers. There are tons of minor infractions on the books. Massachusetts has a list of traffic violations that's 25 pages long. Florida's is 32 pages. And in New York City, the list is 135 pages long. And no driver is going to be familiar with every single rule. No one is reading that whole thing, not even me, and I have resting reads traffic codes for pleasure face. And some of the laws around the country are truly absurd. Some states, for instance, have laws that prohibit drivers from hanging objects from their rearview mirrors, including air fresheners and rosary beads. Incidentally, a dangling air freshener was a justification for pulling over Dante Wright. But many officers will insist that pretextual stops are absolutely essential to fighting crime. Here is a police chief explaining why stopping someone for having something as innocuous as an air freshener actually makes total sense.
So it could seem petty to some people, but in my 32 years in law enforcement, I've seen many minor traffic violations lead to big arrests. Wanted felons, fugitives from justice, murder suspects.
But that is still petty. It is petty to pull someone over for not wanting their car to smell like farts and a yogurt that they know is back there somewhere but cannot find. And when pressed for evidence of pretextual stops being an effective crime-fighting tool, cops will constantly bring up that this is how a state trooper caught Oklahoma City bomber Timothy McVeigh, by stopping him for driving with no license plate. It's a case that now holds mythic status among police officers, which is a little weird because, one, he was only caught after the bombing, which, to be honest, feels a little more like a miss than a hit. And two, the reason they were able to arrest him is because McVeigh was carrying a concealed weapon, something which is not actually illegal in Oklahoma anymore. So if we've all got our dicks up for hanging on to laws that caught Timothy McVeigh, let's go ahead and add gun control to that pile, shall we? But the truth is, research has consistently shown pretextual stops do very little to make us safer. A Philadelphia study found that out of 300,000 stops, only 0.67% recovered any sort of contraband, which could include weed, and just 0.17% recovered any weapon. So when you measure the success rate of pretextual stops with any metric other than percentage of Timothy McVeigh's caught, they're a tremendous waste of time. Also, for what it's worth, in some smaller municipalities, police aren't just looking for crimes, they're looking for money. There are towns around the country that have resorted to ramping up ticketing while enduring budgetary shortfalls. Basically, as soon as their balance sheet gets worse, magically it seems, so do the driving skills of the people in their community. We've talked before about the practice of using municipal violations to fund local government in places like Ferguson, Missouri and Brookside, Alabama, and people can still wind up being stopped, ticketed and even imprisoned for inability to pay, because in 17 states, minor traffic violations are arrestable offences that come with a criminal record. And even in states where that is not the case, people can still end up in jail because many places can lock you up for failure to pay fines. Just listen to this woman from St. Louis explain how traffic fines can quickly spiral into a dire situation.
How many times have you been stopped?
I'm in St. Louis. I don't keep count of that.
5? 10?
Keep going. 10 was the minimum number of times I've been locked up. So take that and double it. I've been stopped no less than 20 times. If you don't have the money to pay the fine, you can go to court. When you go to court, they'll tell you court costs, ticket, plus fees, you now owe $300. You have $300 to pay today. No. All right, put you on the payment plan. So every month, come see us and pay this by the 21st. If not, we'll issue you a warrant on the 22nd. Make your payments on time.
Okay.
So let's say you don't make that payment. You get a warrant. So what do? If you have the resources, you can pay. But most people don't have the resources. So you run and catch me if you can.
How many warrants did you rack up?
At one point in time, I was wanted in 11 different municipalities.
11 different municipalities. How did you live with that?
Carefully.
Yeah. That seems about right. Asking how do you live with 11 warrants is a bit like asking how do you hold a newborn baby or how do you give a porcupine a hand job. The answer is fucking carefully. And the cost of these stops is borne overwhelmingly by communities of colour and particularly black drivers. One analysis from Massachusetts County found that police pull over black drivers at more than twice the rate of white drivers for non-traffic safety violations, like a broken taillight. And many police departments, even large ones, will obscure this by simply refusing to track the racial makeup of who they stop and search, while others will gather the data but fail to connect the dots as to what it means. Just watch this police official in New Jersey cite data of his own before having his case destroyed with a pretty simple statistic.
I mean, I pulled our motor vehicle stop data by race this morning before we did the interview to get it in real time, and we're at 1,814 motor vehicle stops for the year so far, and 576 are Hispanic, 573 white, and 574 African American. So it is pretty even across the board, and if it ever spikes, then we'll investigate why.
Yeah, but what you just told me is really stark, because 60% of the population of Bloomfield is white, and only about 20% of the population is black. So how do you account for that?
Like I said before, it's basically where our police officers are deployed.
Right. It's about where your officers are deployed. You are so close to figuring it out. You just need to see the obvious conclusion. It's like watching a fourth grader do a multiplication problem on the blackboard, get all the way to the end, and then write the answer, Woody Allen is innocent. No, what? How did you get to that? The answer's staring you right in the face, you idiot. And look, racial profiling during traffic stops is obviously nothing new. From the Jim Crow era South all the way through the 80s, when cops were trained using a drug courier profile, which had them looking for supposedly telltale traits like dreadlocks and wearing lots of gold jewelry, which is profiling both black people and, I guess, very occasionally, white girls named Branch who make their own tampons. But she's going to be fine. Her dad is a senator. And that was even before that Supreme Court case that I mentioned earlier, which raised the bar to prove cases of racial bias. Because to do that